Hello and happy Thursday, everyone. We are going to start off a little bit different today than what we normally do. So for today, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get into Kat's piece here before jumping over into all of the other critiques. So Kat had a unique situation that we were working through yesterday, and I thought it would be best to kind of take a look at her image. I also asked her to package up her file and send it over. So we're going to be looking into the Maya file there, and we're going to be taking a look at how I would approach lighting this scene. So just to kind of pinpoint what we're working through, she had started off with, and this was just like a key light only pass, and we talked about how we've got the key light coming in here, what the key light could do. We've got these, obviously because there's no fill value in there, like how bright to make the shadows. We tried some iterations. We were kind of finding that balance between like being too lifted versus being too dark, and trying to really zero things in. So yesterday, in yesterday's critique, I asked her to separate out each light. We've got a fill light coming in here. Then she had, that was the final. And then it looked like two different key lights. And I think, after looking at this and seeing that your breakdown of how you were building these Kat, I do think that there's a better approach that we can take to this shot. So I kind of wanted to take a step back, again, take a look at it, how I would approach it, because what we're seeing in the final result, you've got some elements from the reference that you like, and some of those are working. But we also some of the elements just aren't quite there yet. Like the shaping on the character isn't quite there. If you look at like this fill value of the light, it's interesting. Like we're not seeing any of the light on her garments, but we're seeing it on her arms. One of these key lights, like she's very, very flattening out, and it's really, really hard to generate good shaping in your final image if one of the lights is doing something like this to the character. So that being said, I did want to kind of show you guys my approach of how I would approach something like this. So for starters, I went back and I wanted to look at some reference. So I went and I found some outdoor market reference, and some things that I was looking for were light quality, like how soft these shadows are, how bright or how dark we're seeing it in the fill versus how light we're seeing it in the light. So kind of the key to fill ratio. And then let's just start with that. That's where I started with these like few images. And what I was seeing was that there's not a lot of super sharp shadows from this painting. So like this is about as sharp of a shadow as we're going to get. They're still pretty soft. And then in terms of the key to fill ratio, we got this brighter key light versus the fill light over here. Fill light in this one's feeling a little bit more blue. You can see the blue sky kind of filling in these regions here. Same thing here. So just like kind of elongated, soft shadows, not a whole lot going on there. I also wanted to look at like some portrait lighting and how in these type of scenarios, and these were all through Getty Images, I think, how like different portrait lighting could work in these types of setups. And what I was finding was like, okay, so you can do this if the character's in the shadow, like underneath the awning, you can get some good shaping on them, and then create kind of darker elements over this bright blown out background. I don't know if that will really work for us because she's kind of under an awning. So we probably will be more in like one of these ranges. And what I saw out of these two in the middle was that like her skin tone is very similar to the background, so she's not popping out as much, but her garments really are. So that's one thing to think about there. This one, again, like the saturation points in the garments are popping forward, but tonality wise, her skin tone and her value is very similar to the background. I personally was more drawn to like these, where the level of the character in the foreground over a darker background is really popping out, because then we can get the value to pop and we can get the saturation to pop. And I think that's really dynamic. Like here, his skin tones are brighter than the background's. The background's a little bit bluer. And so I think that could work out really well. So let's hop over into the Maya file. And just for showing my setup, I've got the viewport here, script editor down here. This is just like the basic, if you go to Windows, Workspaces, rendering standard. And then down here is there's no lights, but you can see this is the window there. The render view there. So we'll fire that up here in just a sec. So first of all, let's take a look at the scene. So we've got her, we've got kind of some mock walls there, this base, this opening, we got this cart, a couple setups here, and I don't have the true shaders on them. I put everything just like in a basic. I'm using Arnold, so an Arnold standard shader on it, just so we can kind of play around with the lights as a whole. So the first thing that I want to do is I kind of wanted to simulate your camera setup, which let's take a look at that for just a sec. So we've got this. It's a little bit further back, a little pulled up. And I did want to talk about that a little bit. So and just because you have options, right? So like one of the things that happens is if I model something, or if somebody I really like a friend of mine who is, she's really funny and she's fun, like I want to include everything that somebody has given me. So I have a tendency to pull out a little bit too much, and because I wanted to kind of see everything that was created. And sometimes what happens is it creates a scene that's a little bit less intimate and a little bit less realistic. So sometimes I will go ahead and push in a little bit more, and that will help to really help to make a more intimate, more close connection between. Because again, if this is all about because now if we're in here, it's more about the character, than out here, it's more about the environment. So that's more of what you want. And then I always encourage people. Let me switch over to my other camera because I have another camera where you can kind of see the resolution. So this is just like a standard, HD resolution on something. Since this is a still, we do have the options of like. Let's see. Let's select the camera. Oh, actually, sorry. Let's we do have the option of going a little bit more, like more wide angle if we wanted to go like more cinematic about it. Additionally, since this is kind of a portrait, we can go the other way with it and make it more of like portrait lighting, like this, make it more of like a vertical orientation. Really, totally dependent on you. Let me just go back to. I'll just go back to this for now. So if we're doing just like standard HD, it would be like this. The other question that you want to ask is what you want your aspect ratio to be. So like right now, by default it's like 35 millimeter. That's fine, but it's pretty, I don't want to use the word boring, but it's pretty standard. So with portrait lighting, lots of times, and again, this depends on if you want to focus in on the character or on the environment. With portrait lighting, you may want to shift it to like an 80. This helps flatten out the features of the character a little bit, because you can see like if you go super wide angle and you put the character in the same, like we just did the headshot, you can see her, everything kind of gets distorted a little bit, versus if we went like 85 and did her same thing, then everything kind of gets flattened out. So generally speaking, for portraits, you want to use more of like a telephoto. This will also allow us to go a little more out of focus with the background. So totally dependent on you. But just to mimic what we were seeing before, I just kind of like, let's just kind of keep it like this for now and see where that gets us. Okay, so we got the render view down here, this scene here. Cool. I'm going to create two lights. I'm going to create a skylight and I'm going to create a key light. The key light's meant to simulate the sun. Skylight is just going to be our fill. So you can do it in either order that you want. Let me go ahead and save a version of this in case this crashes while I'm doing this. I know a lot of people who like to put the fill lights in place first before the key light. I personally like to do the key light first, just to get an idea of how it's tracking, how it's shaping. Let's see, so we're in this perspective camera. Let's see, let's refresh this. Refresh render. Okay, now we've got the spotlight here. We're gonna go ahead and take a look through that. Just center it, because we always pretty much want it centered on her. Let's start it here, and let's just create some exposure. And again, I know that you don't work in Maya and Arnold, but it's no big deal at all. This is pretty much true of any render engine. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of playing around with this. We've got, because I want to start to figure out a way to put her in shadow. So what I'm seeing, put the area back behind her in shadow. So what I'm seeing is that if I can go like up into this region here, I can create some shadow from the awning back behind her and allow her attributes to pop forward a little bit. So now I just kind of want to play around with this a little bit and just kind of play around with that position. The real question is like, do I want the light to kind of scrape across these background here? Do I want it kind of like, how do I want it hitting up these elements? The one thing I don't want is like hard shapes of shadow on her face. So let's see if we can't. Oh, there we go. Look at that. See, now we're kind of skirting around some of that and really shining in. It's really getting into her face. Let's see if we can push it over here to the side a little bit more, just create a little bit more shaping. Yeah, that's feeling pretty good. If we went down a little bit lower. All right. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Now let's talk about these hard shadows, because now we're seeing, you know, what isn't necessarily what we want. So what we want to do is we want to increase this radius, start like 15. Maybe that might be a little bit much. Just drop it back down to 10. Say 5. All right, so now what we're doing is we're getting some of these like softer shadows in here. Feeling a little bit better along those lines that we wanted. In fact, let me adjust this camera a little bit, because I think we can do better than this. I'm rotating it now a little bit more towards her. Let's cut that off just a little bit, because I want to kind of get up into her eye range. Do we want to be low? Maybe something a little more like this. Just putting her more in the middle. There we go. Let's just stick with that for now. Okay, so what I want is to, like, again, I like that this is falling in the background there and allowing the back behind her to go a little bit darker. And now you can see here, as I lower it, we can start to see some light creep in across the back. And I like this, right? I like that we're starting to see some shaping, some value differences. I know we've got a lot of open space here in the foreground, and we'll deal with that. We could put like a light blocker in there or something else, but for right now, that's kind of working out well. All right, I'm just going to stick with this for now and say, like, we like this light position, because now this shadow is coming across the front of her. We're getting good shaping across her face. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and put in a skylight. So let's go into Arnold, Lights, Sky Dome Light. And again, this could be any other type of light. So what I'm looking for now is, like, I'll go back into the reference and start to see, let's see, we wanted to do more like one of, it could be this dark. It could be more like this. Those are pretty inside, so I think we could probably go a little bit lighter with that. But let's go ahead and take this down a little bit. Let's take this intensity down to like 0.3. And now we're kind of in that range a little bit where it's not like super jet black. And if you want, like, if you wanted it to feel sunnier and brighter, you could push that brighter. And this does feel like a sunny day. So it's really just a matter of how much you want to expose for the shadows versus how much you want to expose for the sunlight. Now, all I would do from here is say how much I want to push this into, like, this is a skylight, how much I would want to push this into the cooler realm and make it like a blue sky. Make that a little bit darker. And then how warm do I want to go with the spotlight? You know, if it's more sunsetty, might be more like that. So now this is kind of falling into the range that I would want. And from there, I would kind of like put in a rim light to separate her out, try and figure out, you know, and this is where the shaders on the individual scene would start to come in. But I think that this, kind of regardless of where the camera kind of ends up, like even if it ends up like, let's get it up closer in on her. I think that this is some nice lighting on her face. And it's creating some shaping on her hand, some shaping across her face, some shaping on these elements back here, while keeping those in the dark and allowing her light elements to kind of stand out there. Yeah, so I think that that's kind of how I would approach this one. I would encourage you to maybe take a step back and try doing something similar, because I do think that ultimately your results will be a little bit stronger. So, Kat, let me know if you have any questions about that. I hope everyone else found that useful. And now I'm going to hop into doing the other images as a critique today. All right, let's begin with Annabelle here. So, Annabelle, I really don't have that much for you today because this is looking pretty stinking great. The only thing, again, I just keep throwing these super minor things in there, is if you could continue to work to try and get a little bit more contrast in the hair there. It's close. It's just like a little bit too lifted in the pinks. And then the other thing would be if you want to get some try just for the sake of trying, maybe pushing some more cooler values into the shadows, especially that one towards the top. Thought that could be kind of add a little more dynamic nature to that. But other than that, I would encourage you to maybe try a different time of day with this one. I do like you've got a great setup here. You've got a great, everything's working really well. I'm just thinking larger than the lighting critique in terms of having a strong portfolio piece is that, and something for your demo reel is that if you could show character lighting like this in, let's say, 3 different scenarios, this is kind of a warm, happy one. If you could kind of do maybe a cooler nighttime one, and then do something where it's like what she's doing might be a little more sinister to show that to demonstrate your ability to show emotion through your lighting, I think could really benefit, would be an extremely, extremely strong piece on your reel. So great job here. All right, Clarissa, this is looking really nice too. I like that it's matching up with the reference really well. In terms of, I just want, and this is off, this is going to sound crazy, but this is off of the reference a little bit, like a little different than what we were seeing. I just want to see like a touch more value in like the core central part of her face. It's just getting a little dark in there, and I would like to see it just a touch more like this. Let's see. You know what I'm saying? Just like a little bit more oomph right there in the middle, and then I think we can probably call this one done. The only other thing other than that was to try and make the reflections, these eye dings, a little bit larger, just because the light sources, they feel a little bit bigger than this. And even if they're not, you generally don't want to do those super pinpoint eye dings and eyes on characters that you're trying to make appear to be a little bit softer. And then right now I'm wondering if there's something that we can't do about this wicker chair. Maybe it's just a matter of getting a little bit more grounding shadow from her back here. It just feels a little bit over. It just feels like a little consistent and overly lifted. And then I was also looking down here. I don't know. These feel a little bit bright in the satin, but I could be wrong about that. But everything else, again, those are super nitpicky notes, super duper minor. But I think that this is looking great overall. Forrest, yes. So like you all, I think by seeing each other and working with each other so often and so consistently, like the speed in which you are able to output images is incredible, and your ability to output like really strong images is incredible too. So for this one, I think the biggest thing is I would just pull some yellow out of it. Her skin is looking a little strong on the yellow side. I would just pull that back into here. And then maybe tone back the value just a touch in there. See how this looks. Just because the brighter part of skin tones doesn't always go with that much saturation. So I would just pull that back just a touch and end up a little bit more in this range here. And then if you can, the way that Annabelle was able to pick up some of these kind of specular highlights and the satiny portions, I would try and hit that as well. And same thing with these garments down here. But But yeah, I think I like your tone is really nice. The volumetric back behind the character is very nice, allowing her contrast to pop forward. These in the foreground look really good. It's just about getting those final little details. These flowers here are a little bit flat, like these ones here, 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 here. So just try and get a little more shaping in those if you can, but really good stuff. Jeff, yes, super cool. The floor looks a little too patterned without, like, I guess it's hardwood, but like some of these patterns look to be repeating themselves pretty quickly. So just watch out for that. Her skin tone is looking good. It's just a little too specky. The specularity is a little too strong, specifically on his nose and on his ear there. And specularity is a little high here and not quite high enough there. But that's looking really good. This green wall in here, I don't know why that's standing out to me. I guess it'd just be a matter of making it darker. I just want to see it darker. It's like standing out a little bit too much, especially in the shadow regions over here. But I think those are the biggest ones. If you also, I mean, this would also be an opportunity to add some volumetric light back here from the sky coming down to kind of separate him out. I think that would help out a lot. And then you could also I would vignette these corners and probably down here a little bit more because it's a little bit of dead space, and we kind of really want to zero in on the central point there on the character. I like these are like super minor, but those like specular hits on that dresser going off in a blur looks really nice. These over here look a little bit overly lit, but like what we're seeing back there looks really good. Yeah, making good progress. Like the skylight looks a lot better. I like these little highlights that you're seeing from the moon. I think that's looking really great. So great job there. Nigel, this is your update versus your previous version. And then you also included this other one where you cropped out the statue on the screen right side. To be honest with you, I actually like the sculpture there because it expands the space and kind of helps define the space a little more for me. Here, it just kind of feels like she's like it's just there's not as much of a story there. I love it when we see just like parts of things that imply a larger world than what we're seeing on camera. So I would keep this in, maybe shift it over to the right just a little bit more. But I like that it's there, and you can even put the letters down here, that because I know you wanted to do the goddess. I believe it was the goddess of flowers. I would you could still put it down there at the base and like emboss it, or not emboss it, whatever, like carve it into the base, and just keep it like a little more subtle. But I don't think you necessarily need to lose this entirely. So this is looking great. I think that the quality of light that's coming down here would not illuminate her quite this much. It's just because like this light looks a little saturated and a little hazy. And so the quality of that implies that there's more softness there. So I would try softening that just a touch, but the shaping on her face is looking really good. I think you can go a little pop, maybe a little more fill up underneath here, because if you think about, like, I know we're going to tone down the brightness on that, but that's still creating quite a bit of light right around here that would fill up into these spaces. And it's just a matter of getting these because it's like really about telling the story of her saturated, very fun garments. So I think you can go with that. Try and keep this into the warm spectrum. Keep her skin, because that's looking a little bit green in there. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think that'll be a good stepping stone to our next iteration. But yeah, big step over this one, and just a really great job. Jedi Rick, we got you. I could just go with Rick from now on, but I love that you changed your name to Jedi Rick. That made me laugh. So I think the key light's working really well. You're getting good shaping in there. I think now the biggest thing that you want to put in there is some nice bounce fill light to get in up underneath here. Like I was showing in Kat's video, look at the reference. And you have painting reference from this. It's just like really bouncing up in there. So I think that key light's working well. I think like getting that secondary light at a level where there's still good shaping, but also that we're feeling that it's like a bright sunny day is where you want to go with the next iteration. All right, everyone, that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions. There's no other big announcements other than I nerded out this morning and added a bunch of software icons into our emoji library. So feel free to add a Unreal or Katana or Maya or Arnold or Nuke logo as an emoji response to anybody else's post. All right, that's all for today, and I hope you all have a wonderful Thursday. Happy lighting, everyone.